Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got 10 games here on a Friday night slate to choose from. In this one, we are going to be taking a look at the Suns. They are playing in Sacramento against the Kings at the Golden One Center. We got another game video up for you and our player props, so make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with everything we're bringing you this season. Also, head to thelines.com if you want to check out everything we're bringing you guys in written form there up on the site for the NBA this season. Also have an odds finder tool up there. Nate and I are using that every day. Make sure we're getting the best odds available to us across all these U.S. sports books that are giving us bets this season. Nate, let's jump through this 10-game slate and then talk about this Kings and Suns game.
Yeah, the Celtics coming off a smackdown in Sacramento are back home. They're minus 11.5 against the Pacers with Halliburton probably out again. Spurs are plus 7 at the Wizards, and they are expecting to play some guys, including Keldon Johnson, Zach Collins. Pistons are plus 12.5 in Toronto. Rockets are plus 12.5 in Memphis. Immediate rematch there. Hornets are plus 13 in Dallas, sensing a theme here with teams not trying to win. Bucks are minus 8 at the Jazz, where I've already ruled out, I believe, 4 key players, so that's trouble. Bulls, and we break this game down for you, are minus 2 in Portland. The Warriors are plus 5 the Sixers are plus 5 at the Warriors. Embiid and Harden are both questionable, but Embiid's pretty close to probable. And then the pesky Thunder, plus 5.5 on a back-to-back in LA. They'll get the Lakers. The Suns are plus 4.5 or 4, depending where you get it here on opening lines at Sacramento. Suns having just gotten, exactly what we expected to happen, basically, at the Lakers, which is just a lack of depth and a lack of interior presence without DeAndre Ayton dooming them against the Lakers team that continues to play well-rounded team ball. And now you get Sacramento, which is like the exemplary team offense of the NBA this year. Number 1 in rating, number 1 in the clutch as well. And just the depth. I mean, it's not just De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis, and you need to look no further than their last trip to Phoenix 12 days ago when they got 65 bench points for a 128-119 win. That's with De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis both having under 18 points. Fox shooting just 8 for 22 from the floor. That's with DeAndre Ayton giving the Suns 22 and 12. And we've talked about without Ayton now, they've lost 5 of their last 7 road games. They've struggled defensively. They've gone over in 8 of their last 9 without him. They got outscored badly in the paint against OKC and allowed 32 free throws to an OKC team that doesn't get to the line. The biggest issue right now with their defense since the trade and then since losing Durant, who's supposed to make up for a lot of these depth issues, their defense has just really struggled. But the biggest issue is the fast break points and the points off turnovers, which is exactly what you look for if you want to take Sacramento. And you got Sacramento in this bounce back spot after their worst home loss of the season, which came on a back-to-back to Boston. It just kind of a really exhausting point in their schedule, right? They had that 4-game roadie, come home on a back-to-back. They have to play a Celtics team that's looking to get right and just clicks. And now they got a normal rest against the Suns team that just doesn't have depth beyond Devin Booker. We talked about their bench points right now. They're 20th in that and 25th in efficiency and bench points since the trade here. But we are looking at a big game from Booker because he's done everything he can to pick up the slack for KD since the injury. Now 37 points per game in his last 5 against the Western Conference and shooting 65% from the floor. He's averaging 34 a game in his last 4 against the Kings, shooting 60%. They don't have anybody to stop him. So I think you got to lean over here. I mean, Kings at home, what more do you need to say? And the Suns have gone over now in 5 of their last 6. If these two teams hit 247 in Phoenix, where the Suns tend to play much better defense, if you look at the sample of the entire season, and the Kings tend to score less on the road, now we're back home in Sacramento. I think you take the over anywhere 242 or lower. I'd be good with that.
Yeah, I mean the Kings or the Suns aren't playing defense, and they're playing fast. They're playing fast as hell. They're playing the third fastest pace since they lost KD, and he went down. And I mean, do what you will with that. DA's not in there either. DeAndre Ayton hasn't been in there for just the last two, but it's been before that they were just playing with that pace. Because honestly, like DeAndre Ayton is like a stretch big in the sense that he like he's not going to stretch all the way out to the 3-point line necessarily, but he's like going to stretch from like 5 feet to 12 feet. That's where he lives. He's not really getting any closer to the basket than that, and so he runs the floor well, and he's a good athlete. My main point here is there's nothing that slows them down. Even Bismack Biyombo being their center for the last few games hasn't slowed down their pace, because I think also they just can't play defense, man. And they're giving up those fast break points, and they're not getting back. I mean, Terrence Ross is getting minutes. Like this is not your older brother's Suns team from like a season and a half ago, where they just had a litany of wing players that could do everything around their two stars in Chris Paul and Devin Booker. And Chris Paul just is not, we talked about the other day, he's just not going to be it in terms of being able to like carry your offense scoring wise the way that he used to be able to. And getting in the mid to high 20s from him is just not something you should be expecting at this point. It's still going to be points, and there's still going to be pace. And like I said, there's going to be guys like Torrey Craig and Terrence Ross and the other random wing players that they have right now that is actually pretty slim, as we talk about, which is why their bench is so bad. But even their bench is exemplifying this type of style of play, where their defensive rating is like the fourth worst in the last 7 games since they lost KD. They're still scoring plenty because they're still also playing at like an 104 pace in the minutes that they get in there. So like points, yeah. Like do the odds makers have the chutzpah to put a 249.5 point total out there for people to bet on over or under on? Because the Kings games, at home, just in the month of March, are averaging 249 points. They're losing 123 to 126 on average. So like, you got, like, if you're an odds maker, do you not start there as a starting point for like, well, what's normally happening in these games when the Kings play at home over a 6-game sample size since March started? Like, and even before that, right? We know they've been playing a little bit better defense before this month started, where they're just absolutely terrible and have the second worst defensive rating, up around 126.5 defensive rating in their last 6 at home. Like, they were a little bit better, so their games were averaging like a few less points because they weren't giving up 126. They were giving up like 121 or 120, which is low 240s. So I would still take them, because if that's the type of game that the Suns want to play, the Kings do it better. The Kings do it way better, and they have way more people to last, which is also another reason that they can be so good at the end of games and not be super tired, because they do have enough depth to be able to continue the style of play and get the points up that they need to outscore the other team, which I know Mike Brown probably still hates every night as a defensive coach, but like has just leaned in, and that's what they're going to continue to do.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about not playing defense. That's been the Kings' MO for a couple months now. And not being good in defense in the clutch either, where I did say they're the number one clutch offense, but 27th at home in defensive rating, and actually only 10-10 in clutch games at home. So it's not necessarily like put it in the bank, even though De'Aaron Fox is the number one scorer in that situation. But the thing is, the Suns have been much, much worse. And if this is a close game, they're 4-11 on the road in clutch games, and they have the 8th worst net rating on the road. In that situation, also a bad defense. So it's another thing in favor of the over here, but really just in favor of Sac winning a close game if it does come down to that. I think what I'm most interested here is the money line or a tease to get that total a little bit lower, to get the Kings at even. If you're minus 4.5, you get that down a little bit. They're just a team that doesn't usually lapse, as we talked about, until we called that kind of trap game against Utah. And then it's just a case of short rest against a powerhouse Celtics team. And otherwise, they've just been very trustworthy, especially at home. And I'm not trusting the Suns right now without Ayton. It's just so tentative. If they lose one guy out of the 3 that are remaining, I mean, now they're missing 2 of their big 4. And it was always a question of, well, who's their 5th guy? And now we're like, who's the other 3 guys that are going to fit in around Booker and Monty Williams, trying to figure it out on the fly and get these rotations in order. And it's just going to be tough against the Kings team that has the most continuity of any team in the West right now.
100%, yeah. And I am a little bit worried about the Kings because, like, the way we talk about the Kings and everybody does right now is still with the level of disrespect from the standpoint of, like, you're adorable the way you're winning here and scoring so many points, and this is fun to watch. But as soon as you get to the second round of the playoffs, like, I don't know, we could see you losing in the first round of the playoffs, to be honest. If you're to play like the Clippers, even if they don't have Paul George, like, I don't know, Kawhi's about to handle things right now as he's doing as we're recording this against the Thunder, proving to everybody that maybe he doesn't even need Paul George. But my main point here is like that's not fair. Like, they're still a better team than this. And that's why, like, these thoughts start to creep in after they lose 2 games in a row, and thoughts start to creep in where it's like, oh, they just lost to the Celtics and they were at home and they should have won that game at home because they were at home. And it's like, well, let's relax. Boston's very, 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 very good. And so, you know, that was another game that was like, okay, it was a letdown versus Utah. They wanted to win against the Celtics, but it was the second night of back-to-back and, you know, coming back home after a long road trip, whatever. The main point here, though, is I should have mentioned this earlier while I was trying to think of guys who are filling in for the Suns, and I'm going, Torrey Craig, I can't even remember who. It's like, well, it's because it's Josh Okogie and it's Landry Shamet, and those are their other 2 guys. And I mentioned Terrence Ross, but like, those are the other 2 guys giving you minutes. And Josh Okogie, God bless him, is super athletic, but just there's a reason that, like, he just keeps playing on different teams and, like, isn't it, despite the fact that he walks in looking like Tarzan and doesn't matter necessarily. So the defense is just taking a huge shot. And then Landry Shamet, like, also God bless him, great shooter. It's not it. It's not going to be it on defense either. So they don't have enough to fill in around those guys. Once again, resembling almost a Lakers team after they lost all their wings, that you're just like, well, now it's just a hollow team with 2 guys that are really good at basketball, but there's 5 guys on the court at once. So that's, you know, all 5 guys for this Kings team right now, are, especially in that starting lineup, are going to be really good and probably feast on this Suns team on the offensive side of the ball. So
yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting game to talk about because, I mean, Portland, you said tanking or, you know, kind of shifting priorities to a degree. I mean, Anthony Simons has been ineffective and injured for the last few weeks. And so it's time to sit him down and see what you have in Shaedon Sharpe, apparently, who really, you know, thrived alongside Dame Lillard, broke their 6-game losing streak with a nice 23-point effort there, played 40 minutes and was a plus 28. And, you know, Jeremy Grant also hobbled. I mean, I have no idea the actual extent of these injuries, but it's just like a chance, like Trenton Watford, you know, see what you can do. And in his last 4, he's been very efficient, very effective. They still allow 120 points per game in this last 7 stretch here, and they really struggle defensively in a number of areas, which makes me, you know, certainly want to say the Bulls are going to be able to beat them. I mean, that performance from Sharpe and breaking the streak came against a Utah team that I just mentioned, it sitting all their best players as well. So the biggest thing is when you talk about Portland is who's going to be able to guard Dame. And while Caruso's questionable for the Bulls, we know Pat Beverly's in. And if Caruso plays too, that's certainly going to be 2 guys you can throw at him, throw in the kitchen sink here. Dame did drop 40 when these teams played in February, but that was with no Caruso and shot over 50%. Last time and then he faced the Bulls in 2021 with Caruso on him, scored 22 on 33% shooting. Versus the last time he faced Pat Bev in the Lakers, 24 points on 30% shooting. Last 4 versus a team with Pat Bev on it, 25 points on 37% shooting, minus 32. Rating there. So, I mean, if Dame's not going to be Superman, then you got to worry about Portland. I mean, you need both him to do that, and you need these young guys to continue to play ahead of their skis, so to speak. And just in terms of just like, yeah, Portland saying what do we have here? And that's the one thing that gives me pause to not like bet heavy, along with the fact that DeMar DeRozan's questionable, and I would not bet on the Bulls without him. They need all 3 of their guys. But it just gives me a little pause to say, like, maybe the Blazers, they're not just playing for the play-in spot, which they don't think they're going to get here. They're sort of auditioning to continue to have Damian Lillard in their uniform, right? These young guys are like, no, look, see, we're rebuilding quicker. You know, we have something here. I mean, the fact that he's been paired with Simons for most of the year, and it just hasn't worked. It's been far less effective than it was with CJ McCollum because you have two small guards. And so it's like, well, maybe if we get this big wing, see what you have with this rookie, maybe there is a future here, because all of his comments recently about, I'm not chasing rings, but also like, what the hell is this rebuilding shit? Like you traded Josh Hart and, now we have absolutely no defense and we've been, a doormat. But I think we can continue to attack them at basically no spread here. Even if DeRozan is out, LaVine did torch them last time. LaVine is on a heater. And, the Bulls, they've been hanging their hat on defense, right? Last four roadies, 104 with a 107 defensive rating. Also gone under at 11 of 15 roadies. And the Blazers are going under at a pretty high clip against the East. Also just lost 14 of the last 18 against the East. So I'd lean a little bit towards defense carrying the Bulls here and getting them to win.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't. It's funny because like the Jazz kind of resemble the Blazers in some ways, in the sense of like Danny Ainge is like kind of trying to tank, but then he'll randomly allow like Laurie to play, or not even like Agbaji. He'll just go off and he'll just kind of be like, no, just kidding, come back, never mind, back to the bench. And Portland is the same weird back and forth of like, we're trying to win, and we're gonna trade Josh Hart for Cam Reddish to prove to you that we're trying to win. And also now we have Matisse Thybulle, who couldn't find 5 minutes a game on the Sixers, but like, we'll take him because maybe he'll make a shot on our team, and not the case. So like, it's very confusing. Dame is pissed because he's like, I'm not here for a rebuild. Like I'm showing you guys loyalty through the lens of, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, and give me somebody to play with. And I don't have anybody to play with. And you're not even playing the guys that I have in Jeremy Grant and such at this point, who also might not be here pretty soon for them in the offseason. But at this point, like, yes, there's some nice young guys out there. But like, if you look at the rosters, let's say let's say DeMar doesn't play, just which 7 guys do you like more still at that point, even if Caruso doesn't play? And at least you have a Pat Bev, who's an NBA veteran that you trust on a basketball court as much as you can trust Pat Bev. But I'm also looking at the defense of those young guys who have been getting minutes. And I don't want to touch a total necessarily. I still think you go Bulls at a very small spread on this one, as we record on a Thursday night to try to get ahead of some of this stuff, right? Catch some of these early lines. The defense for Portland, though, is just bad. And to be honest, like, as far as the total goes, the defense for Chicago stopping what Portland's going to do isn't great either. They are giving up a lot of threes since March started. They've been giving up, I believe, the 5th most 3-pointers to their opponent, and a really high clip as well. They're getting a lot of attempts and they're getting a lot of makes as well against the Bulls. Maybe Pat Bev stops a lot of that. I mean, Dame's going to probably still get his. You can only guard somebody from 35 feet so well, right? And that's where Dame's been pulling from still at this point, and pulling a lot. So, I'm never going to take an under on that, but it's just him alone and his ability to beat a Utah team that, like I said, as soon as they won a game against the Kings that maybe they shouldn't have, Danny Ainge was like, all right, everybody back to the bench. We're not doing this. Even if I'll put Laurie out there and make you think that I'm trying, because he's going to drop 38, Markkanen will, but like, nobody else is going to get 12 points. So that'll be fine, right? Nobody tanks like Danny. He's so good at it. But at any rate, they're also, Portland giving up like 120 points in those 7 games. They're allowing, they're also allowing their own 3-pointers a lot. It just doesn't matter against Chicago, who's right back to scoring like 10 a game. The thing that does matter is Portland allows a ton of mid-range, and they allow it at a very high clip. And that's been going on for the last 7 games as well, since they haven't had anybody and lost 6 of their last 7. They're giving up like the 4th highest field goal percentage from that, like, 12 to like 17 feet. I mean, I have it right here. It's the exact numbers, whatever the feet exactly is. It's like 10 to 19. Thank you. Anything from 10 to 19, they're giving up a ton of a very high field goal percentage. And like, that's what we're talking about here with the Bulls. And if Zach LaVine's going to be the focal point of the offense, then we're talking about a lot of threes. And Zach LaVine's going to probably shoot close to 11 or 12 attempts in that case, if DeMar's not around, and probably have some pretty good looks. So I just like Chicago. It looks like a much better team right now, continues to win, even though they did get smacked by a really, really good 76ers team the other night. They're just way less crappy than this Blazers team right now.
Yeah, it's a Occam's razor explanation right there. I mean, yeah, the Blazers are not a good team. They've lost 8 straight. against teams in the playoffs, 10 straight if you count the Pelicans, which are games they need to win if they want to have any chance at the play-in. Their last 3 wins are against Orlando, Detroit, and Houston, and Utah. They're being the latest ones. But yeah, it was, again, Utah's bunch of rookies. And I don't think, just to go on the side, I don't think it's like necessarily Danny telling you who's going to sit and who's going to play. It's just that they all spiked. Like, everything hit at the same time. Agbaji had an incredible game. They had 7 guys in double figures. They popped up and beat the Kings. But yeah, Utah is not it in terms of like, oh, look, let's see the Trailblazers on track here. And they have this weird thing going against the East where they're just, like I said, 4 in 14 since January 6th, getting outscored by 9 points per game against the East. They're 10-19 on the season. So, I mean, they do tend to go under here as underdogs at home versus like a much higher record as home favorites. And so they're slight dogs here. They do also go under after a W because they can't string it together as much. And then I'm just really impressed by the Bulls. If you look at what they're doing cross-conference, defensive ratings of 105, 102, and 112 against the teams that are in the top 3 in the West right now. Memphis, Denver, and Sac in a row, beating 2 or actually only beating Denver, but, still holding, right there with Sacramento, holding their own on the defensive end of the floor against the top-rated offense in the league. So that is what I think I would lean towards in terms of their defense and leaning on that.
Definitely. And winning in Denver when Jokic is playing is worth 2 wins. So yeah, they got 2 wins essentially because that was wildly impressive and one of the more surprising things that's happened this season. I would continue to bank on that and continue to bank on this defense. Like, we believe you now. You're really, really good at defense, Chicago. You don't give up second chances. You get those defensive rebounds and you close out, except for around the perimeter, it seems, as of late. So we'll see if the Blazers are able to get some threes up, but I think we would still lean slightly under. I think we expect this point total here to probably open, around high 220s, maybe low 230s at the highest, but probably closer to 220, 7, 8, 9 around there more than anything. And that's probably fair, as Mo would say at that point. And either way, I would still be leaning Chicago, as I think this total will probably be properly projected by the books here when we get it in a little bit. Nate, let's jump into your first prop for the night.
Yeah, it's a game we're going to talk about the Kings and the Suns and talk about the Suns' lack of depth and lack of scoring options outside of Devin Booker. So I'm going to hit his prop at 32 points. And I'm also going to take the over on 2.5 turnovers, which is minus 150, because he's just going to have the ball in his hands an absurd amount of times, without KD and without DeAndre Ayton. Like, this is a holy shit split right here. His last 3 without Ayton, 45.7 points per game on 38% usage. No KD for any of those either. I mean, the last 2 with the injury, and then the third previous with before KD came on, and Book dropped 56, shooting 63% from the floor. He does have 4 turnovers, more turnovers than assists. So I initially thought, like, let's tack on the assists because he's going to be playmaking, but it's just not happening. Like, there's just nobody else scoring for the Suns right now. The last 5 conference games since losing KD, Book is scoring 36.5, only 3.5 assists though. 33% usage, shooting 65% from the floor. Again, just absurd efficiency. And, this is a matchup where he can continue to do that. The Kings are terrible against shooting guards, giving up the 4th most points to them in the last 15. They're giving up the most assists overall since the break and ranked dead last in opponents' effective field goal percentage since the break. So it's a bit of a, continue to be right matchup for Book, considering what he's done. And his last 2 trips to Sleep Train here, 37.5 points per game, 4.5 assists, a 35% usage rate in nearly 40 minutes per game. Look, the Suns, we talked about them maybe being content in their spot at 4th when they're playing the Lakers, but it's getting down to the nitty gritty here. I mean, they've lost 5 of their last 6 of the last 7 or so. They're going to have to really claw for a win here. We don't think they're going to get it, but I think Book's going to do everything in his power to keep them in it.
I concur. Let me start by apologizing to the good people of Golden One. It's the Golden One Center now in Sacramento. Right. Sleep Train is no longer able to sponsor them. Regardless, really nice arena, by the way, if you get a chance. And yeah, I expect Book to just do the same thing he tried to do against LA, which is make up for a lack of good players, depth. Mikal Bridges had 32 points tonight, just pointing that out. And it's tough for anybody to really believe in the Suns when, if you're relying on, it's not like Booker and Paul just carried them before, KD got there. There were a bunch of other guys that you'll remember that helped them get to the championship and be a top seed in the West last year. And, Book's still going to do everything and more. He's just going to go off. And it's one of these things where, kind of like when you got to bet on Steph Curry, the season that he was playing without a bunch of people, and it was like, look, he might drop 50 tonight because he's going to pull 15 3-point attempts or 23-point attempts or whatever. And Book's in the same booked position tonight, and this sack defense at home is just god awful. We'll talk about it more in that game video about it. But yeah, they're porous all over the floor and everywhere that Book's going to want to make some points tonight, including 3-point land. So I'm fine with taking Book on a pretty high prop still. So now we're about to go back-to-back Splash Bros. I'm just going to ruin it for everybody and say I'm going with Klay Thompson. And I said to Nate before we started recording, like, it feels like a Klay Thompson game. And he's like, why not both? And I'm like, yeah, why not both? Playing against the 76ers team that just lets guards go to town on them. And, Harden may or may not play. I don't think it matters that much. Maxi's not going to do much in there either, except for speed things up and allow for there to be more points. And honestly, like, Klay can shoot over either of them, even if he does get a bit of like Tobias Harris, super slow-footed Tobias Harris. I'm fine with that as well. At this point, it's just Klay embodies this awful Warriors team on the road as much as he does this amazing Warriors team at home. He's averaging 25 a game at home and about 18 and a half on the road, gets you over this 20 and a half points, which, by the way, is minus 105 on DraftKings. Very happy to be bringing that to you on Thursday night, so we can, as that probably won't be remaining by the time it gets to, let's say Friday, late at morning, early afternoon, and people start hitting it a bit more. But he's at like 5 threes at a 42% clip at home on the season, which is absurd. Even in his last 10 games, and I made sure to get my stats on Klay's last 10 games at home when Steph was not there, because Steph has missed a few home games in the last 10 that Klay's played there. So go all the way back to when he has make sure he's playing with Klay. He's still gone over this prop in 8 of those 10 games. The games he failed to were those weird ones where they lost to the Mavs at home, and another loss that they had, I believe, like the Raptors. That was a really weird game as well. But he's still putting up 27 and a half points a game in those with Steph on a 29% usage, right? So like, it's not like Steph's taking any of his shots away necessarily. He's still playing 35 minutes in that time as well. People want to say he's slipping in terms of his like athleticism or whatever, but he's back to full strength and stamina and able to run those 35 minutes. And even in those last 10, pretty much the same numbers as he's had at home, more than 4.5 threes on a 40% clip. So it's going to be an opportunity for him to score against a team in the 76ers that has been scoring a ton of points on the road, but that hasn't necessarily translated to them being able to stop people nearly as well.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a play for the over here, even though the Warriors have been so good on defense. I mean, as long as Embiid is ruled in, we're probably going to have a better idea of that by the time this airs tomorrow. I mean, he's questionable with what calf soreness. He's probably fine. He's probably going to put down another stamp on his MVP resume and keep this game close, which to me makes 20 points extremely low for Klay Thompson. Like, I don't see a world really where the Warriors are in a game deep into the fourth quarter and Klay isn't scoring 20 unless he's 100%. Just like ice cold from 3. Just in my initial evaluation of the Sixers backcourt and how you beat them, I think it is more guards off the dribble. The Warriors offense, point guard, shooting guard, doesn't matter what you classify them as, right? It's just free flowing, assists, threes. And that's why I like Steph as well. I mean, I mostly like, again, 5 threes is plus 125. Like, are we not expecting this to happen, DraftKings? Or are you just like giving away money? Because that's what they're doing here with these free promos. And in the Boston area, they are literally giving away money in the first 10 days of sports betting. But Steph, 2 home games since the return, 29.5 points on a 30% usage rate, has hit 10 threes in those. His last 10 against the Eastern Conference, averaging about 10 threes, about 31 points with a higher usage rate than against the West, 32%. Hasn't really gotten this matchup. I mean, certainly Philly's a different team since he faced them in 2021. He was ice cold on the road against them, 3 for 14 from deep, but then hot at home, 6 for 11, 25 points. So he comes up short on the points here, 26.5. But that was a 20-point blowout because Joel Embiid was not playing. And Steph was a plus 29 in that game. Of course, the Warriors had Wiggins, and they were a much more cohesive team, or capable team of just running away from people. I'm not trusting them to run away from anybody, and definitely not Philly. I mean, they won 9 of their last 10 road games here. Embiid is undeal-wittable, and I think as long as this one's close, both Splash Bros, you got to like having their props on your side.
Yeah, I agree. And as soon as I see what Joel's props are, by the way, I'm going to hit him. I expect him to play. Doc Rivers said he expects him to play. All the news coming out of around that questionable tag was based on him coming out of the game at halftime while they were winning 76-48 against that Bulls team in that second game of a back-to-back against them. So I don't think he's expected to miss time. They were like, why would we bring him out there at all? We can just say he has a sore calf and he'll be fine. Then you put the questionable tag on him. But there's nobody on this team that can deal with him. Not that he's deal-wittable, to your point, but like, man, does he love playing against someone who he can either bully you down to the basket, or even if he has to, he'll just shoot right over you. Draymond, good luck. Like, this is one of the 2 to 3 centers in the league that Draymond's never been able to guard. Throw Jokic in there as well. Probably Anthony Davis, not really deal-wittable by Draymond either. So it's a very short list of centers that are taller and bigger than him that he can't deal with, and this is just one of them in Joel. So, probably excited to hit some of his props, even though it'll probably be like 33.5, something around there. I would still say he's got to get 35 on a Friday night, making a case for his MVP, right? He's going to go balls to the wall. So I'll have fun betting on him as well. And now I'm going to take one that is a little bit risky, but I mean, it's so high for Kristaps. His points is at 28.5. That's his prop tonight. And if you go under on that, you get minus 105 on DraftKings. This is just an excuse for us to talk about the man who will be doing some of the guarding against him on the San Antonio Spurs. Sandro Mamukelashvili nailed it on the first try. Give the man some respect, man. I mean, he's played 27 minutes in the last 4 games. Mamukelashvili needs some respect. He didn't come all the way to the NBA like this to be told that he's going to let up 29 points to Kristaps, who has only done that once in his last 9 games at home. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he scores more at home than he does on the road by just a tick. And Bradley Beal and Kyle Kuzma are out. So that's why this prop is so high. The Spurs are the Spurs. I don't want to say they suck because I won't disrespect Mamukelashvili like that, but they're not great down low, and they allow a lot of points in the paint as well, which Kristaps might be able to do. They're a little bit better against the 3. They've been better too, by the way, in their last 4 games since Mamukelashvili started getting some actual minutes in there at 27 or so a game, and their defensive rating has gone down from like 119 to 116.8, and that's good for 17th in the league, very close to top half, and then they're 18th-ish ranked in a bunch of other defensive categories that matter. They're getting rebounds, and they're limiting second chance points because of that. So it's just too high, man. Like, Mamukelashvili is going to be able to get in there at 27 minutes a game. You're going to get some, Bates Diop in there as well. But like, it's just too many points in a game that who cares about this game? The Wizards don't seem to care. They're not even playing their best players.
Wizards are like 28th in offensive rating in their last 7 games too. So like, yeah, I mean, who's setting up Porzingis? Like, what kind of electric offense are we seeing here to go through the brick wall that is Sandro Mamukelashvili? Grew up pounding rocks in eastern Turkey. I honestly don't know anything about the guy, but their defense has been better since he got in there. I mean, maybe the second coming of Jakob Poeltl for them, but yeah, you never know with the Spurs when they're actually going to try to. And Keldon Johnson's ruled in, so that's a sign that this could be a competitive game. But if it's not a competitive game, then how's Kristaps going to get this if it's a blowout? Yeah. So I mean, it's just way too high, like you're saying. I'm not trusting Kristaps Porzingis to get 29 points in any matchup right now.
Agreed. And one quick aside, once as we pivot away from Mamukelashvili, did you see that it was a 20.5 point spread for the Spurs against the Bucks the other day? And I believe they covered, which is wild. So yeah, the blowout could happen at any moment against anybody for the Spurs team. I think that if you look at who's going to be playing for Washington, like, they're not even going to be good enough to necessarily blow out this team, but like maybe double digits by the 4th. And to be honest, like, why would you play Kristaps more than like 32-ish minutes in a game that you don't really care about? And to be honest, you might as well try to get out of the play-in right now. Washington's a terrible scenario. I do not envy that team right now. But at any rate, that is all the time we have for you in our player props today. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Also, check out the game videos we have for you on this big slate to end the work week. And until we see you next, happy betting.